Our top story tonight is pretty interesting, we think. It's not directly about politics or directly about the economy, although it touches on both of those spheres and a lot more. It is a succession battle fit for TV because it is about TV and also involves the HBO show on TV, about Fox News on TV. But everything you're about to hear is essentially true and real. It also involves a new big blow or loss for mogul Rupert Murdoch. He is the patriarch of the conservative empire that you are familiar with in some form or another. You've heard of Fox News, their sister publication, The Wall Street Journal, and a lot of other valuable media properties. Well, he has been fighting in a battle that literally is the show title about him and his family, although it's a fictional show based on them. You may recall it was called Succession, and he has just lost his bid to alter a family trust over his succession. The New York Times obtained some of these secret or sealed court documents. Murdoch is 93, and while no one is wishing ill on anyone or predicting how long anyone could live, he could be around in this role for a very long time. But succession planning is about what happens when, like everyone else, he ultimately dies. So he was attempting, with an eye on whenever that event would occur, to give more control to his eldest son, Lachlan. And what we're learning from the Times reporting on the documents is that this was not just some issue of family favorites. It has to do with the politics I mentioned earlier, and he thinks Lachlan is the one who could, quote, lock in Fox News' right-wing editorial slant for years to come, presumably for years after his death, whenever it occurs. So Murdoch wanted to favor the person who he thought would ideologically carry on his global right-wing agenda, which has big impacts in the United States and elsewhere. Now, a Nevada commissioner, under the sort of arcane rules of how these trusts are worked out, ended up being the decider here. And although it is actually a pretty high standard to reject what someone wants to do with their own trust, it's his money, it's his family, because he was found to have acted in concert with Lachlan in, quote, bad faith, that means a kind of dishonesty or not being on the level with the other parties, the plan was deemed basically a charade to permanently cement Lachlan, again, that's what they view as the more conservative leader, in these executive roles in the empire, regardless of the impact such control would have over the companies or the beneficiaries of the family trust. And remember, when you see these legal words like beneficiary, they're just talking about the other kids. And all of this is about the ideology, because the other kids, who are now, of course, grown adult children, were going to get the money, the control of this trust and these properties anyway. The question was who would be in charge, basically, of Fox and the other companies' direction, not who would get more and more money in this very rich family. Murdoch wants to maintain Fox as a, quote, conservative force. And remember, it's an entity that has sometimes been fueled by not only extreme views, which are protected speech in America, people can express whatever they want, but other things that have gotten the channel in more trouble.
You would let everybody get married who want to get married. You want to marry a turtle, you can.
The male typically is the dominant role.
The Democratic Party has decided that rather than convince you, people who are born here, that their policies are helping you and making the country better and stronger, they will change the electorate.
Massive demographic changes have been foisted upon the American people. And they're changes that none of us ever voted for.
These were not insurrectionists. They were sightseers.
They were not sightseers. Indeed, that last voice, who you heard more than once, Tucker Carlson, was removed shortly after last year's defamation loss within the past year. That was such a big deal for Fox. Another revelation comes about how the family does its succession planning. And this one you'd have to read to believe, that the HBO show Succession, which was partly inspired by the Murdoch family, but is, of course, a fictional show, went on to actually influence the real family's succession planning. Murdoch's children began discussing a PR strategy for, again, the eventual death, whenever it would occur. This was back in 2023, because they viewed the way the fictional version of their family was portrayed on an episode of Succession, where that patriarch, the fictional character you see on your screen, Logan Roy, basically died, and it left the family immediately in the near term in a kind of chaos.
What we do today will always be what we did the day our father died. So let's grieve and whatever, but not do anything that restricts our future freedom of movement.
We lost a beloved father. Thank you.
And in terms of your roles at the company?
we intend to shepherd it through its whatever its future may be, but we'll be there. We intend to be there.
That episode, then again, according to these filings and details we're only learning because of the court clash, led one of Murdoch's children, the daughter Elizabeth, to write a succession memo to help avoid a real-life repeat of that fictional and imagined situation. Now, back in the show, which we now know has an art-life interplay because they were writing memos and making plans reacting to it, but in the fictional show, the mogul, Logan Roy, had a failure to clearly name an heir, like a single or succession plan, and that is part of what led to such a nasty and watchable succession battle.
It was suggested that it was your dad's wish that Kendall take over as CEO.
Oh, so he underlined recently?
Underlined or crossed out?
Shiv.
The unknown age of the document isn't essentially moot. You know, it's impossible to decipher.
Well, it sure as doesn't say Shiv.
There's an argument that you're the worst of both worlds. Different, but the same.
It's in the draft plan. I'm on the piece of paper. It needs to look dry and clean and tough.
And I don't.
And it went on and on like that. In reality, Murdoch's succession drama has put a lot of pressure on this family. Some accounts say it's actually tearing them apart. The Times reports that the battle now over this family trust is about influence. As mentioned, Murdoch is not seeking to diminish any of his children's financial stakes in the company. This is not like family battles you might see in, your community where people are actually debating which heirs get how much money, and it can get ugly fast. This is, quote, rather about the future control of the world's most powerful conservative media empire. Fox, the Journal, the tabloid The New York Post that so many people read in and outside of New York. Fox News is, in a sense, the crown jewel there. Fox's influence is more than just, say, a traditional news network. And I will mention full disclosure, they are a type of competitor, right, on cable news. But I'm quoting a lot of sources, court documents in the New York Times that are not direct competitors with them. And when you take it out broadly, you know that the Trump administration, which will be in January an important part of the country, look how many of its nominees, they have to go through the process, but its nominees and picks are from this world of Fox News. Now, I mentioned to you they've had other legal problems. Some of what I showed you earlier was just controversial but fully allowed on air. Some of it has led to major court costs. One of the largest defamation settlements in the history of the United States, $787 million with Dominion, and those weren't just any lies. They were basically the election-related lies that Donald Trump demanded after losing the 2020 election.
A lot of the machines, particularly by the Dominion company, in which Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi hold interests.
You said that there may have been kickbacks to some people who accepted the Dominion software.
Dominion voting systems used in 28 states across the country, including battleground states.
They say started in Venezuela with Cuban money and with the assistance of Smartmatic software, a backdoor is capable of flipping votes.
You know the old saying, what started in Venezuela with whatever software doesn't stay in Venezuela? It's not a saying. It wasn't a true claim. It was actually so costly that they not only had to pay that out, but shortly thereafter, they made major editorial changes. They ousted Tucker Carlson, who has since sort of made his public life as a kind of MAGA-adjacent figure, even speaking at Trump's Republican convention. So the Murdochs are not fighting over money, even though the empire's made a lot of money. And they're not fighting to get into the Trump cabinet. They're fighting for the system that exists kind of above that can afford to pay out $780 million and keep on going, that can afford to stack the bench of the modern Republican Party and the Trump movement, that can install people who then become their supposed overseers in government. For now, Murdoch and his eldest son, Lachlan, are going to appeal this decision, they say, and they could still prevail. But it is a stunning case of art imitating life and now imitating art, and the succession battle continuing to unfold. It might be different from what Murdoch originally saw as his legacy.
If I go under a bus tomorrow, it'll be the four of them will have to decide which of the ones should lead them.
The four of them will have to decide. And he was well advanced in his life and career and empire at that point, and for all we know, that's exactly how he honestly felt then. And given the way the trust was written, and now the claims of bad faith against him, maybe how he felt for a very long time. But something high stakes eventually changed. And again, it's not about money, which is striking when you have such rich and powerful people fighting over a trust. The whole fight is about who controls the crown jewel of Fox and the rest of the empire, an empire that, as you saw in that footage from 2020 all the way through the recent election, has, in a very real sense, not only helped pick who's in charge, but decide who they pick helps enact the agenda of the United States of America.